Hello, if you are new to this channel, I'm James Craig, a self-published author. And that is not just me saying, hey, you should buy my books. The link's in the description below. Got some nice sci-fi for sale. No, the reason that's relevant right now, if you look to the thumbnails, because I'm talking, I brought on guest, Mr. Jason McCuiston here. We're talking about literary agents and kind of the problems, the dangers, the issues with them as a case example of why the publishing industry is in trouble, and more importantly, why I decided to go self-publishing. Other people will talk about the royalty rates, the lack of support, it just not being worked. They only publish stories that are super safe, and so on. Some people will talk about the political activism going on. But I think that if you look at it, which I did study the publishing industry pretty intensively, and I did learn how to get a literary agent. And the problem is that I didn't want to do what it takes to get a literary agent, because to just cut to the chase, you have to do two things to get a lit agent, and it's not what you might think. It is get 10,000 followers on social media, and then go to a bar at a literary convention and talk with the agents there and schmooze them up and prove that you are a nice person that you can work a business with, that you have communication skills in a business setting. The quality of your writing doesn't matter, like, at all. It does not factor in. The only question is, can they run a business with you? And do they think that you have a large enough audience that they can sucker into buying the slop that you put between two covers? Unfortunately, that is the short version, which I could probably just end the video there and make it a YouTube short. But I brought on a guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Jason McCuiston. I'm the author of Project Notebook and the Last Star Warden series. I self-published Project Notebook, and I work with an indie publisher for the Last Star Warden.
All right. Well, let me say hello to the chat. We've got John A. Douglas. We've got Sammy Sadek and Devil's Air. Thank you all for tuning in. Right. You can go to bed if it's 1:30 in the morning. The replay will exist in the morning. I support healthy habits on this channel, but thanks for tuning in. Leave a like before you go. It's the YouTube algorithm things are very important, because, like, it's not a joke that all authors need to build an audience to sell to. And I'm trying to do that by building a YouTube audience. I'm at 490. I'd love to get monetized this year. Which, by the way, anyone tuning in should probably check out my video I did on, I think I titled it A Statistical Analysis of Word of Mouth, where I talk a lot about, I broke down the idea of total sales of a book between the initial audience and, like, the total audience, the rate of reproduction. I think that's probably actually going to go down as one of the most important videos I ever release on this channel. Do you check that out, Mr. McCuiston?
Is that the one you did with the Venn diagram where the everything?
No, that was more. So I also did the Venn diagram one where I was explaining why the publishing industry can only, through no malice, can only publish safe stories.
Right.
Because if the writer has to say it's good, then they have to get an agent to say it's good. The agent has to convince an editor that it's good, and the editor has to convince a publisher/marketer that it's good. So that's like 4 to 5 people that all need to say, according to their taste, that this is a good book that will make money. No malice is necessary for you to end up with, like, the narrowest, safest slice of storytelling possible, because everyone has different opinions, and so you just end up with safe choices. It's a product of the system.
Yeah, that was the video that kind of led to this conversation.
Right. So a couple months ago at this point, it was basically a response video to big YouTubers that sell to their audience, but I wanted to present it a bit more intelligently than just, like, complaining about that, because, well, there's nothing wrong with selling to your audience. That's literally what you do. Like, a successful author sells one book and gets it to, let's say, 100 people. And then if it's a good book, he has 100 people to sell his next book to, plus more, because they're going to tell people about this good book they just read.
Right.
So that initial audience, every single person in there has some random amount of other people that they will turn into buyers, right? So you need a big starting pile of bodies before it tapers out. because it's not, nobody writes an infinitely selling book unless it's 50 Shades of Grey and Harry Potter. Yeah, that's an important video. And it kind of explains why agents are directly incentivized to only pick somebody with a massive social media following. Like, that's how you get into the industry, and that seems to be the only function literary agents have nowadays, is they go investigate the author's social media, which obviously kind of has a type of person it rewards in that role.
Yeah, because I came to an agent in a little bit different way. You know, basically everything that I've done in publishing, I've done it wrong, and then it's wound up here. But I just happened to send the query to the guy after he had binge watched The Last Kingdom, and my novel hit that sweet spot. And they tell you don't send stuff during the holidays or until the 15th after New Year's or whatever. This was like, the last week. It was basically between Christmas and New Year's when I sent it to him, and it worked out. And, a week later, I got the phone call. Everything was going great. We were talking about stuff. And then he said, so what social media are you on? I was like, I'm not on any. At that point, I was like, I had no interest in it. And it was like flipping a switch. And it was just like kind of getting a little bit cooler. But he's like, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you think about, what we've talked about, and, talk to your wife, and then call me back tomorrow and see if you want to do this. And I was like, I don't really need to, you were at the top of my list, and, it seems like you've got the pedigree, everything's going to work out. And he said, okay. And then next thing I know, nothing. I mean, it was crickets, and part of that is on me because he offered me the handshake deal, which naive, I was like, well, hey, that sounds okay to me right now. If he's this interested in it, he's going to, eventually we're going to have to get to paperwork, but if he's just going to shunt me off, then there's no paperwork.
Yeah. So it sounds like for that exchange, until he found out, you basically hit the slush pile lottery.
Yeah. I took all the courses and did all of the, researching the agents and all of that stuff to make my list of, the people that which is like finding a needle in a haystack these days.
All right. Let's talk about that for a sec. Agents are like contract workers, which you might not realize what that means if you haven't done a lot of work on your house, which if you join my Gilded, which is where the book club is organized, which you should totally join because we're reading Armor by John Stakely right now, and the live stream for that will be this Saturday. That was for chat. I talk a lot about my home owning troubles, and the fact of the matter is you call somebody up for a quote for work and have them explain to you like, oh, this is what it's going to take to fix your problem, such as your basement's leaking, or your antenna fell off your roof, or wind blew shingles off your roof, or you have a giant tree that needs to be removed without taking out somebody's garage. You name it. The problem is most of them are actually terrible at the job, and that's just true of all jobs. Like, just because somebody like has a license to do the job, and it's even worse when you don't need a license. Not everybody anybody can call themselves a literary agent, because what they do is they represent you in a quasi-legal sense to publishing houses, and they're supposed to have connections. But if you just pull up somebody's website and go, oh, this looks like a professional website. Oh, look, they got these books published. You might not realize that those books were published 15 years ago, and they haven't had a relevant sale since, because they may have said the wrong thing to the wrong executive and gotten blacklisted. And even if they take your book, there's nothing they can do with it. So that's like the big caution with literary agents is you need to study them and make sure you're talking to somebody who can actually do the job, because a lot of them will just maybe they're not even going to take money, but they might take your time.
Yeah, well, I noticed after he had the book for a month or 2 months, I finally was like, well, hey, how's things going? Well, no taker shit. I would get these terse one sentence emails. Sorry, my dog has decided mouse play.
Hey, I demand to see the dog.
here, Tonks. Here, Tonks. Let's see. I don't know if I can get her in front.
Where's this camera going?
My wife just called her away. Sorry.
My beast is flopped out on the carpet upstairs, soaking in the heating vent. Sorry. So you're getting one sentence emails from the guy that took your book, basically.
Right. And I was asking him, should we look at doing rewrites or revisions or anything? No. Yeah. And I mean, that was the most I would get from him. And in my mind, I'm thinking, he's my agent. So maybe if I pitch him a couple more ideas, he can have more stuff to shop around. When he has these meetings with these publishers, okay, you don't like that? Well, what about this one? Passed on all of them. And I was like, well, okay, that's weird, but whatever. And then I started hearing rumblings in the Writer Beware. And I was like, that kind of sounds like the guy that I've been talking to. And sure enough, after I think he took me on in January 2017 and September 2018, AAR asked him to resign for ethics issues. And I mean, that's the reason I'm not ever going to mention his name. But, I was like, okay, it's time to move on. And so then I started shopping Project Notebook around, which was a completely different book because I never found out where he had pitched the first manuscript. So I was like, well,
yeah, that's a big problem, because if an editor gets presented the book wrong and they pass on it, they never want to see that again.
Right. And so, I mean, even me asking him point blank in emails, who have you pitched it to? Nothing. Nobody.
Bro, that's trade secrets. That if he told you, you'd cut him out of the picture.
So I don't know.
So let's not forget, agents are middlemen. They're supposed to, middlemen are not implicitly bad, because they're supposed to provide a surface, because you, the writer, don't want to go learn a million quirks about editors. You just assume the agent knows those quirks, and that's why they get a cut. Let's not forget, agents take a big cut. Not as big as your royalty check, but they're taking money out of your pocket.
Right. And I mean, I understand the hustle involved when, you have to go through the slush pile and then, juggle all that stuff. But once upon a time, agents served a valuable purpose, quality control in the industry.
It was supposed to be quality control.
They have given that up. And in recent time,
this is also in a time when when they were good, it was when they were literally on the same block as the publishing houses in New York. Mm-hmm. So that an agent living in Michigan or Nevada could mail in a physical printed copy of their manuscript and, a self-addressed stamped envelope for the agent to literally walk around town giving to editors. Then the internet happened. And the fact of having a man on the ground representing you kind of stopped mattering. But it was, at that point, an old boys club.
Well, especially when the agents want you to do all of your own marketing through social media.
I don't know how they pulled that scam off. That's like, as soon as they started asking authors to do their own marketing, the response should have been, you're fired.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, so what are you doing besides going and having lunch with these editors? Maybe after a cocktail, you say, hey, I got this book. You want to look at it?
So the way it's supposed to work is their quality filter, because they're supposed to carry the brunt of the slush pile, which we'll talk about the slush pile later. Yeah, because that's a big problem with the industry. But they're supposed to find the good ones and get it to the good editors so that publishing house bites and wants to spend the money, because that is supposed to be the advantage of traditional publishing, is they will just drop thousands of dollars on getting it good. And that means paying high wages to a developmental editor, to a copy editor, to a formatter, to the cover artist. And back in the day, most importantly, printing a couple thousand copies and distributing them to brick and mortar. Now, Amazon happened. Brick and mortar does not matter. Like, unless you have broken through the stratosphere into, like, your aunt has it on her coffee table, that book, that the Sarah J. Maas's of the world, need to be in brick and mortar. Right. But 99% of books are sold online now. So
Yeah,
that
just not
cost
much.
went away. The price of cover art is going away. And the insider info I've been collecting is they aren't like unless you have a big following, they're not even paying editors to work on it. The stats I'm hearing is like if you get an advance less than $50,000, there is no editor. So it's literally just like, do they think they can sell to the audience you are bringing to the table? And they'll put up some money for some bad cover art and get it into bookstores.
Yeah, don't get me started on TradPub covers. That's a whole different issue.
I should invite you on the next time I'm doing a cover roast. Those are fun streams.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started life as a graphic artist illustrator, so
I just have this handy. Minimalist, it's okay, but this is an uninspiring book cover.
Give me pulp all day long, a Space Marine with half of his uniform torn off with a gun in each hand blasting bugs. That's what we want to see.
I should have saved this meme I saw ages ago, where it's just like the biggest tragedy of the traditional publishing industry is horny oil painter is no longer a viable career option because romance novels just photo bash stock photos now.
Photo bashing, it was like the first attack, and now we've got that's another thing that.
All right, let's put a pin in that. We're supposed to be bitching about literary agents.
Yeah.
All right. How about we talk about the slush pile? The 5,000-pound elephant in the room of the traditional publishing scene, which is going to break them because ChatGPT is going to break them. I think actually artificial intelligence might save them if they adopt it correctly. But that requires a large language model that isn't insane, which I don't think they're willing to adopt. So fundamentally, the dynamic that changed was in the 90s. I think we can broadly say that's when paperback publishing for science fiction and fantasy was at its peak, right? They were reprinting what is now considered like the best science fiction and fantasy ever written. And they were just ravenously bringing in new people. And young adult took off in the 2000s. But let's talk about the 90s. That's before they were accepting internet submissions, which means that the rate of information spread among possible writers was limited. It was hard to learn how to write well. There are so many resources now that anyone with the time and the inclination can get really good at it. And I mean more resources than just read good books, Fivehead, which is like 90% of what a writer has to do, right? So there were less people that were getting a manuscript to a good state, like a publishable state. And then they had to go through the effort of like finding people in business and like the yellow pages and mailing it to them and it getting to them. And those technological bottlenecks kept the slush pile relatively small, and you could make actual quality judgments on what you were getting. Then the internet happened, and people started accepting electronic submissions, and the ability for one person to send their query to the entire publishing industry just happened. You didn't have to track down multiple people. You could just go to an aggregator site and send your manuscript to like 15,000 people. So all of a sudden, everyone has the same giant slush pile that they can't actually get through without arbitrary rules, such as you need 10,000 followers.
Well, the agents tried to counteract that by every one of them having a little bit different. So, they would be able to, throw you out just if you phrase one thing wrong in your query letter because it didn't meet their guidelines. So, they tried to, filter a little bit, but have you been to manuscript wish list lately? Because they've got a new strategy.
The lie wish list?
Well, basically,
I have not heard of a single person getting hold of an agent and that agent saying, yeah, that wish list is still accurate.
Well, what's funny
haven't heard
is
it happening once.
you go to the agents, and it's like, what I'm looking for now, and they basically tell you what novel to write that they want to represent, and so
It's
like,
going to be the agents that start writing books with ChatGPT.
yeah,
They're going to go, I'm cutting the writer out. I'm just going to use an AI to write what will sell.
I mean, if they've got the connections with the publishers, what's stopping them? Certainly not ethics.
Yeah, you would know.
Well, I'm sure there's some good ones out there.
The correct profession of a literary agent is lawyer, and you should always be dubious of a lawyer. So, lit agents have to do something to get through the slush pile because it is simply inhuman. It's like being a congressman and getting a $15,000 or 15,000 page spending bill the day before you have to vote. But an artificial intelligence can get through that slush pile if they develop a sane and useful artificial intelligence. They take e-submissions, they have the AI read it and judge it, and use the AI as the first pass filter. They might be able to actually regain some quality control. But I don't think they're going to do that because they have obvious political leanings that you just go to their Twitter bio and they will tell you that they don't like you. Right?
Oh yeah, that newsletter I had from Tobias Literary Agency. I'm not gonna, worry about not naming them because they sent this out in their newsletter, and they actually said, if you're writing fantasy, anything with a political, in parentheses, liberal bent is an easy sell. And I'm like, okay, you're just throwing that out there in the world.
Part of me says, is that even wrong though? Because like, if you talk to a conservative and ask, hey, what you reading? They're going to say like Marcus Aurelius or whatever they found on a podcast that was showing. They're typically pulling up nonfiction books or the classics or the Western canon, which if you've read the Western canon, it's extremely hit and miss.
But I mean, there are non-extreme leftists who enjoy writing stuff, and it's basically telling you to shop elsewhere,
Yeah, so people on the left have a bit more pop culture crave. They are more likely to buy a new release from an unknown author. So I don't necessarily blame that agency for just saying, basically woke books sell better, because they probably do.
That's it.
Facts stated right here. Now, what kills me about because like I read the Western canon. Right now, I have like 4 nonfiction books on Alexander the Great that I need to read for research purposes. I write fantasy. I write The Undying Emperor on Royal Road, and the main character is like one half Alexander the Great, one half Napoleon. So yeah, I have like arranged the campaigns of Alexander the Great from a couple hundred years ago. Guess who publishes that? Penguin.
Nope. Well,
you want a printing of a book into the public domain? You go on Amazon, you get these massive New York City mega corporations producing it.
Well, that's the only thing keeping publishing alive right now is the stuff that's in public domain. I mean, you go into a Barnes and Noble, and they have just tons of stuff that was written, within the last century or even further back.
I blame top 10 lists, which is why I've resisted making my own top 10 list. But most people don't read. We just have to address that fact. Most people don't.
Oh, yeah.
Most people who read very little. And they want to make sure that they are getting a good book. So they look up, what are the good books? And they're going to get Malazan. They're going to get Book of the New Sun. They're going to get Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, Ubik by P.K. Dick. They're going to get Heinlein. They're going to get these massive established names. They're going to get the Robert E. Howards. They're going to get you know, et cetera, et cetera. Because what they're going to do is they're going to pull the list of best books and they're going to read those. And then as they branch out, they'll go into more obscure stuff. And maybe they'll find stuff that's better, but they're always going to have that group hive mind of, well, everyone else thinks Dune is one of the best science fiction books ever written. So when they eventually get around to giving recommendations, they're biased towards a safe recommendation. So they're going to recommend Dune, even though Dune's kind of ass. Like, it's really not that good. But it propagates and sells itself again and again and again based on reputation because, well, the society values a literate person. Like, it is a social perk to say, yeah, I actually read quite a bit. I'm well read. That's social points. And how do you prove that you're well read? You say, well, I read this book you read too. I read the same book. So these old books get lodged in the zeitgeist and propped up, and they keep the Barnes and Nobles in business.
Yep.
Because that's the kind of book that people buy when they find it on the shelf at Barnes and Noble. Now, the people will pick up Jurassic Park because they go, man, that was a really good movie. I really should read the source material. And then they learn that actually it was a lot better as a movie because getting told about these dinosaurs is a lot less impactful than seeing dinosaurs.
I think that's probably one of the few Crichton books I haven't read because I was like, I don't know how they're going to top, how we would top it, even though, you know.
I had a weird time reading Jurassic Park because, like, the first half I actually really liked, and then it got into, and then this dinosaur attack happened, and then this dinosaur attack happened, and then this one, and then this one, and it just like it looped that same plot point like 5 times in a row, and I was just like, just get to the freaking mainframe. I'm bored. They're obviously going to get there. The story can't go any other way than getting to the mainframe. Hold on. Okay. What are you saying about Hyperion? Hyperion's one of the best books ever written. All right. Here's a question for you. How do you feel about comparisons? Because you have to pitch a book to a literary agent by comparing it to a successful book.
See, that's one of the things that bugged me when I was trying to shop Project Notebook, because it's really not like anything that's been written about UFOs since probably the 60s. And if you tell an agent that, that's, you know, might as well just wad up your letter and throw it in the trash. So
they hear that and they go, well, it might be good, but I don't know how to sell it. I don't know. Like, let's pretend we're talking about the platonic ideal literary agent. They're going to go, I don't know what reviewers to give an advance copy to them. Because you like game reviewers, right? You give the product to somebody that's going to like it so you can build buzz. If you don't know who's going to like it, like, you run the risk of giving it to someone who doesn't like it. And then there's a bad voice. And it takes very little bad response to have a big effect on people. Because, like, let's be honest, 90% of books are shit. It's just the fact. Nobody remembers the hundreds to thousands of other science fiction books that were published the same year Dune was published. Because they were bad.
Or they just didn't get the hype. Or, you know, the
or whatever.
traction.
But, like, yeah. I'm just going to safely say most books are bad. Most people are going to, like, people remember the really good books, and that sets a high bar compared to what's actually getting produced. That's a thing I keep running into with other indies where they talk about, like, my books are so much better than what the new releases pile from traditional publishing. And it's just like, so what? That's not what a consumer is comparing you to. They're comparing you to Dune.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say to authors is other than, you know, enjoy it while it lasts. We're kind of like buggy whip designers, you know, at the turn of the century. So, you know, we might make the best buggy whip ever, but, you know, Henry Ford's over there cranking out Model Ts.
You think AI is going to screw everything up?
It's definitely going to muddy the waters. But, I mean, right now, think about it. Books have more competition even without AI than they've ever had before. Yep. I mean, you know, at the peak of, you know, basically being an author, you know, for entertainment, you could either go to the horse race, the boxing match, or the play. That was it. you know.
So I should actually probably be focusing on this because I'm a cyberpunk writer. I should be talking about the way the internet is destroying society. We genuinely might be entering some kind of cultural stagnation because, like, what books are people like today? You ask people what is the best fantasy book ever written. A lot of them are going to say Lord of the Rings. They're going to say Conan the Barbarian. You might get some people that say Malazan, but they're not going to name something that came out in the last 10 years. Even though it might be like objectively God's eye correct that the best fantasy book ever written came out, 5 years ago or something. People are, because we're constantly recreating and reprinting and maintaining these old relics, people are just still reading it. Like people still read Paradise Lost. People still read the Divine Comedy. And those we still read for a good reason. But we're probably approaching a point where we're going to lock in more literature than a human can reasonably read in a lifetime. And then you'll kind of get in this issue of like, why would you read something new? And maybe AI is going to come along and say, well, it's because I'm going to write the exact story that you want. I'm going to give you exactly the wish fulfillment that you personally are looking for. And that definitely screws over the new release writers. Like, I think Hollywood is working on developing the tech of just like, they're going to have motion capture actors that you'll never see because they're going to keep mapping Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves, Samuel L. Jackson, etc. onto fresh humans to AI make their movies with the same set of celebrities for the rest of time, possibly. Why would you watch a new actor when you could watch the greats?
I saw something today where I think Tyler Perry shut down, expanding his studio in Atlanta because of a new AI film program that he saw, test footage, and he's like, oh, well, if this thing's good, already this good, why do we need to build any more sets? So that's some scary stuff right there, where it's already that far ahead, and we're sitting here trying to build worlds on our keyboards.
Right. I will probably eventually, if they get to a sane artificial intelligence that can basically be my editor, I'll use that. Personally, I think that a storyteller AI that just gives you the story you want is going to be like playing Skyrim with God mode enabled. Because like, why, like, Game of Thrones as an example. Oh, you didn't like that the Red Wedding happened? You just tell the AI, no, do something else. Make that not happen. And it's just like, where is your investment in the story when you can always instantly have it rewritten to suit your taste?
And once you have that, you lose the touchstone, the zeitgeist aspect, where you can share that experience by, talking about it.
That's actually why I think human writers might survive AIs, because it's like, why would I read the AI story generated for you? I can get my own. And then suddenly nobody's reading the same story. The only reason you would share the story is because you're saying, well, this is the product of a person. Like, it wasn't tailored to fit you. So it's going to have a different dynamic, right? Now, that's that video games are going to adapt it because they can put rules into how the story progresses to get the same kind of buy-in. But written books, there's going to be a market for personalized books, but I think human stuff is still going to be what spreads. Maybe I'm just being hopeful.
Well, I mean, I do think there is something to that. I mean, it's, when we go back to discussing the visual arts, I just don't think, no matter how good the AI stuff is, people are not going to say, oh, that's my favorite AI program. But they are going to say, Frazetta is my favorite artist, So I think the human element is always going to be there,
Yeah. I think image generation is going to have a interesting effect on the business of commissioning, because like I just got cover art done for my next book that's going to be coming out soon, Low Key Connections, and the artist actually got snippy with me about revisions because I viewed what he was sending me as still in the sketch phase, and he was like, "No, this is half painted. Like, you can't keep asking me to repose her arms." And I was just kind of like, "You upcharged me on this, and you're giving me sass. The fuck?" And I was like trying to politely tell him, "This cover looks like shit. It will not sell. You need to change it." And now I just kind of have to live with the fact that he used Taylor Swift as the face reference for a 20-year-old. Taylor Swift is attractive for a 30-year-old. She looks 30. So when DALL-E is an option with no sass, no infinite revisions, the market of commissions has to adapt to that. It's not even about the money, it's about the working relationship.
Well, I mean, I don't know why people can't remember the customer is always right.
I've actually had a lot of artists be up their own ass. And like, especially if you haggle the price, they'll start going, "Well, then I'm cutting hours out of work on this." So,
well, when I was studying illustration, my instructor said there are three things: there's time, quality, and money. And the customer gets to pick two of those.
yeah, that
Artist
is true
gets
of
to
everything.
pick. So, you know, I'm willing to, negotiate right down to the dime with people, but it is what it is. When it comes down to it, there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah, yeah. I try to give people leniency on time. A lot of people are just like, "No, I want this. I want to get my paycheck now. I'm going to do this as fast as I can get it done for you." It's just like that. No, I want this done right, and I will wait for it to be right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always been my goal when I do the freelance stuff, is to make sure that what my name is on is the best that I can do and my customer's happy. And, to bring this back to the writing aspect, that's the same thing I do with the stories. And, I'm glad that we do have the option now that we can get around the Titanic of, TradPub.
Yeah. So obviously that pushes the slush pile to go back to that problem. That's the reader now has to deal with the slush pile. There's a lot of bad self-pub. There's a lot of bad self-pub, especially when you start including free publications. Because, as I mentioned, I'm on Royal Road. I publish an epic fantasy there for free because it's fun to write and I don't spend the time to edit it. Because honestly, I view like my suffering is what's worth money. So if I'm not suffering to produce it, I don't need to charge for it. Editing is suffering.
Yeah.
There is absolute trash on that website. There is unreadable garbage clogging that site's databases. And readers have to sort through it and figure out what they want to commit to.
And it's excuse me, not only is the author doing themselves a disservice, they're doing all of their peers a disservice by putting out stuff that is not ready for prime time, and to go back to the literary agents, once upon a time, that was what they were supposed to do, was to, have that bar of excellence that you had to get past. But
yeah, somehow people still have a perception of quality because Tor Books published this. Oh my God, this must be good. It's getting a Netflix adaptation. Netflix adapts garbage, and you may not even know if their adaptation was bad or the source material was bad.
Sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out.
Sometimes, yeah. But because people are judging by the publishing houses by the classics, they're blinded to the fact that the new releases are also bad. That the system of pulling in books, preparing them, and distributing them is no longer functioning.
Well, that's hurting the industry across the board because, reading isn't an immediate thing. You do have to invest some time to look through the cover, and when people pick up one book and it's crap, it's going to make them less likely to pick up another book. maybe they'll just go watch a TV show or play a video game. So
to drag in some controversy, you're familiar with Eric July, right?
Mhm.
Remember 5 months ago when he said, he basically said, I got mine, I don't owe you shit, to the indie comic sphere?
Like I said, I tried to stay out of all that stuff, so
yeah. Well,
I missed that.
I'm simplifying his statements and making them a bit more insulting in the simplification. But that caused a big controversy of like, oh my God, we supported you. You only got your millions of dollars because we promoted you. And he's like, and that doesn't make me obligated to promote you. That was a big issue there. And I feel like I stood alone saying Eric July has one obligation to the indie sphere, which is to make a good product. Because if someone is considering indie comics, they're going to go to the biggest name in indie comics. And that is Eric July, Ethan Van Sciver, maybe you can name a third. And if they're going to check those comics first, and if those comics suck, they're going to assume everyone making less money is even worse.
Yep.
So they're going to stop. They're not going to go beyond a bad book if it's the flagship of the indie sphere.
See, I think, well, I don't know. Let me just say, you did a review of a novel that I read that I agreed with your review, and you seemed like the lone voice of the YouTube crowd in your review. And I'm like, okay, he gets it. So, I mean, I don't want to be...
I might know which book you're talking about. It might be sitting behind me on the shelf that you can't see. People definitely go to reviewers as a substitute for publishers because, well, you can't trust publishers. Once you realize that, you need to check reviewers, and you can get into problems if people are being paid to promote books and they charade as a reviewer when really they're a paid shill. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're just it's like toxic positivity. They will say only review books they like. So you actually will never figure out where their standards are because you only hear good things. If you never see a reviewer complain about something, then it's just kind of like, well, how do I trust that? What is my reference point? Because if I, the reader, have read books that they've read and I severely disagree with that reviewer, I don't want to drag anyone in. You need to know that when to stop trusting a reviewer, because they might just be like, oh, I just want to support people, and that's dangerous. Like, it doesn't actually work, in my opinion. That's why I try to be honest. And I always try to explain myself in reviews, which I hope is why people are following me. Because even if I have a bad book review, where it's just like, I was bored for this reason. If you don't care about that reason, you'd like the book then.
Yeah, see, I could never be a reviewer because I do not finish stuff that just doesn't grab me. I'm like, okay, this might work for somebody else, but it's not my bag. There's too many other good stuff to go looking for,
I have definitely slogged through some bad books. I'm also going to bring up a comment from a while ago that I was saving for the end here. We got a viewer that wants to know about your Star Warden series.
I thought he's asking you, James.
No. He typoed.
I got you.
Why don't you take a moment here and show your stuff that you went to the indie sphere to get out there because lit agents kind of suck.
Pretty much, yeah. The last Star Warden, in a nutshell, it's the Lone Ranger in space. Because, I wanted to go back to my first hero as a kid was the Lone Ranger. And I'd gotten tired of seeing the deconstruction of the hero across every, genre. And so I sat down and just basically made a composite of my childhood heroes and what made a hero. And so I created the last Star Warden. And, he's a little Buck Rogers Captain America because he's a man out of time. I'm starting to feel that way myself. It's like, we used to be a hopeful people, but now all we want to do is tear each other down and, all this stuff. So basically that's what he is. He's kind of like a Buck Rogers character in an Expanse type universe where it's, you know, cutthroat, dog eat dog in space. But it's more, I don't know, like the classic sci-fi from the 60s and 70s. Star Trek's a big influence, the original series.
You're talking
In
about
my mind.
it's pulpy sci-fi.
Yes, pulpy sci-fi all the way. You know, I am not a gearhead. You know, I don't know the inner workings of my car. There's no way I'm going to, you know, make a realistic description of how a starship works. So, you know, you don't have to worry about slogging through a lot of tech stuff. It's a spaceship.
Hey, excuse me. I like those details. I include those details. I've got a manuscript right now where the actual magnetic fields of how they're collecting space debris is a plot point.
I throw in some crunchy bits, you know, that I've gleaned from some Michio Kaku books, you know, on futurism, just to make it sound authentic. You know, we have the Einstein-Rosen bridges are a thing. You know, that's how we do the interstellar travel. We don't, well, later on, there's faster than light travel, but, you know, you'll have to read the series to get into that. But mostly it's kind of like the old Star Trek, you know, something bad happens on a planet or a space station or whatever, and this guy has to go in with his alien partner and figure it out. So,
prose novels or comic?
I would say they're illustrated short stories. That was my goal, was to make them like, you know, the pulp stories or pulp magazines. So volume 1 is, I think, 5 or 6 stories, but they are episodic.
Got it.
And then volume 2 is basically like a movie trilogy. So it's 3 novellas, I think, in cinematic, you know, stages. So that's just the way I equate everything, even though it's all prose. So.
Right on. All right. Probably should have gotten your book buy link in the description, but Jason's link to his Twitter is in the description. You can find all of his stuff there, I assume.
Yeah, and if you go to my YouTube channel, which is the same as the Twitter, it's got book trailers, and I think the links to the books should be on all those videos. So, you know, you get a 2-minute, you know, idea of what the book's about, and then you can go check it out on Amazon.
Book trailers require editing. I recognize their utility, but I don't want to learn video editing, so I don't do them.
Oh man, this laptop that I came with, and you know, it had the software on it for like 5 years before I even messed with it. It's low tech. It's easy. So, man,
fair enough. Maybe I should start dabbling in that Sora AI. Just describe my book, use that.
Next thing you know,
unfortunately, that would cause a huge controversy. That, oh my God, James used AI. Blacklist. How dare he?
Yes, you just outshatted Shad.
All right. Chat, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, you have, I'm going to say 30 seconds to get them in. I'll respond before I hit end stream.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here for my first live stream.
Yeah, thanks for going on. And I currently get rid of that. I do want to remind everyone that I'm going to be live streaming on Saturday with a panel of other viewers and guests and creators and so on, people from the Gilded who finished Armor by John Stakely, which you didn't know is basically half the inspiration to Halo, which was a very important video game in my childhood. And the book's been really good. Like, I'm 300 pages into it's about 400 pages. I'm gonna have it done this week. It'll be fresh in my mind. I'm happy to talk about it. It's a very interesting approach to the power armor space marine problem I've been enjoying. And yeah, the Gilded's a fun place. And no one has thrown in a question. So till next time, everyone. Jason, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's great.